of us to build, except that as you can see, the kid is not very happy with the tricycle that we built. So what happens? What happens when you don't have good product engineering leaders, right? What happens in the company, and what are the symptoms of what we see? So we did some ground study with several hundred companies, and we looked at kind of the repercussions of not having good product leaders, in an environment. First, I think we already talked about it, quality code on time, but unfortunately, no context. Second, we're building stuff, but the stuff is, while structurally correct, while the architecture is awesome, while the algorithms are scaling, it is essentially not creating delight. It is not as user-friendly. And the user-friendly doesn't have to be a screen or a web or a UI. We're talking about the end-to-end user experience design, how they understand about your product, know about the product, all the way till they buy and acquire and install and use and refer others, right? Their entire life cycle needs to be delighting, something that doesn't happen when you don't have good product leaders, because each one of us are only focused on the silo that we're focused on. And third is, what we do is play the Russian roulette. I've done this many times in my career path. I see thousands of engineering managers do the same thing, which is, since we don't know which features are going to make the most delight, we build it all. Right? So over-engineering is a direct reflection. A lack of prioritization is a direct reflection of not having that customer context as far as the product leadership is concerned. So, we talked about product leadership. We talked about the process of productizing, which is essentially we want our engineering leaders to go beyond just project execution into understanding the aspects of productizing, which itself is a process. So how does that look like? Right? In a typical company, you have an idea. The idea goes through some validation, some vetting, some executive sponsorship, internally and externally, and you have a plan. Now the plan needs to go and get through the development phase. Eventually you go and verify, qualify, make sure that the quality assurance happens, and you eventually launch and monetize. Now across that development process, there is actually an overlaying productizing process, which is asking fundamental questions. The first question is, market analysis, a series of things that one has to do to figure out, is this the right idea to go build? So the fundamental question you're asking as part of this customer insighting process, win-loss analysis, competitive analysis, is really choosing to build. How do you decide what you want to go build? Once you do that, the next step is to figure out, is this long-term making sense from a strategy perspective, from a long-term roadmap perspective, from a leverage of resource perspective? So can we build it profitably? Now, profitably doesn't mean immediate dollars. Profitably also means sometimes user acquisitions, different monetization models, which does not require money, right? Which does not is not measured by just the money. It could be user consumption, user usage patterns, and so on and so forth. The third is, can we build it right? Do we have the right resource, the right quality, and can we actually deliver on what we say we will? The fourth one is what we call marketing it right? And finally, can we sell it effectively? So these 5 phases essentially characterize any productizing process that any product company, whether you are a B2B, Cisco router, all the way to a online Yahoo property that gets updated every 4 hours, they all eventually go through a similar productizing process, a similar mindset, a similar evaluation scheme. And there's obviously a bunch of things that happens at every step. I'm not going to belabor on that or go into more details here, but we can certainly take some questions at the end. What's interesting about this productizing process is that while each one of you might not become a product manager in title, we do expect our engineering leaders to understand the interlock, understand how do you work with other cross-functional teams, how do you work with product managers, how do you work with business analysts, how do you work with project managers, engineering managers, and so on and so forth, right? So this is very important to understand that the interlock is a critical aspect of what we want and what we expect in the emerging product leader, especially when you're building something of intellectual property. Here's some ground research that I might just quickly show you as a snapshot, and a lot of this research was done with about 430 some product engineering managers, product managers surveyed in India, specifically in India for the first time. and that annual research is available on the Institute of Product Leadership's website for those of you who care for the more details. But here's very interesting insights on what we found, right? So the definition of a product leader, is also characterized as those who've got a brain of an engineer. Clearly, that's most important thing to start. The leadership skills, the soft skills to convince people, right? To get your things done, to sell the vision both internally and externally, to lead by influence. At the same time, have a heart of a designer, right? So again, another characteristic of what we want in an ideal product leader. Product leaders also, on general, are work hard, play hard type of folks. Here's some salary data that was compiled for the survey that was done here specifically for product management, product engineering in India. Interestingly enough, a lot of them had also some kind of a master's degree. 55% of them mentioned they have some kind of an MBA. And yet, what is interesting is that hiring managers are the only one from an HR perspective are using that as a filtering criteria, right? Most senior engineering managers, when they hire, might not look for just a certification, but it certainly becomes a filtering criteria to get into a product company. Here's some other statistics on a very interesting poll on how many of you from MNCs versus IT services. Some interesting data on where people spend their time. And all of this is relevant data specifically in the Indian context. As you can see, a lot of the technology engineering managers, the technology engineering leaders are spending a lot more time in product road mapping than customer insighting, as you can see, as a proportionate portion of time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Rajiv, and Amit is going to walk us through some very practical insights on what he sees on the ground reality, having managed thousands of people in his career path. It's also very interesting to get his perspective. So happy to take any questions now or defer it for later.
Thanks, Professor Shah. So as Pinkesh said that we're talking about a product leader, and nobody better than Mr. Amit Phadnis, who has been a product leader for the last 25 years. And not only being a product leader, has groomed a lot of product leaders out of India on Cisco role and other companies that he has worked in. He's also a board member of IPL and has also sponsored, announced a special scholarship for the EMBA class of 2014. So I'd like Amit Phadnis to take it over and spend some time, tell them what you were expecting on a product leader, from a product leader.
Sure, thanks Rajiv, thanks Pinkesh. Folks, good afternoon. I think you just sort of heard an excellent sort of narration on what does it really take you to be a product leader, and what are some of the attributes, what are the success parameters, criteria, where some of the product managers and successful ones are spending most of their time on, and things like that. If you really look at the ecosystem in India, we've sort of evolved